Authority, or ELA. My name is Ivan Mekinda. I work at the Information and EURES unit in ELA. Okay, this was rehearsed then.
Take one.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Light Vehicles Big Changes, the online information session organized by the European Labour Authority, or ELA. My name is Ivan Mekinda, and I work at the Information and EURES unit in ELA, and I will be your moderator for today. Today's session focuses on the upcoming application of the relevant Mobility Package 1 rules to LCVs, or light commercial vehicles, used in international carriage of goods or cabotage. These rules will start applying from tomorrow, that is, from 1st of July 2026. This is the third and final session in the series that ELA has organized on this topic. We started in December with a practical webinar. In April, we delivered, together with the Irish national authorities, a more detailed online session, including specific aspects such as the transport operation involving the ferry crossings. Today, we are not simply repeating what was already presented. Instead, the session has been shaped around the questions that you submitted during the previous events. So, our aim today is to focus on the points where further clarifications seems most useful. During today's session, we will cover three main areas, let's call it like that. The extension of driving and rest time rules to light commercial vehicles, the role and use of tachographs, and the rules of posting of drivers, including the Road Transport Posting Declaration portal. We are joined by colleagues and experts who will guide us through these topics from both a practical and regulatory perspective. Before we start, I would warmly welcome all our speakers. It's very good to have you with us today. To officially open today's session, I would now like to invite my colleague Ivona Kašpiksova from Cooperation Support Unit to share a few welcoming words. Ivona, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ivan. So I hope our viewers have the 2 hours of their time to dedicate to this very interesting online information session, where we will be focusing on the main core of the social legislation in road transport. But as Ivan said, we're trying not to repeat things we have already said at the 2 previous sessions, which you can easily review and rewatch again at our YouTube channel, European Labour Authority channel on YouTube. Today we will be going from the social legislation, namely the driving and rest time. We will take a closer look to tachographs, because we understand that many of you, both operators and the drivers who are using the light commercial vehicles fleet, may not be yet quite acquainted with the rules around tachographs. And that is why this is not just the session that we will be dedicating to this topic, but we are also working on additional self-learning videos that will soon be available on ELA self-learning platform. As always, we will share the information on our social media, so please continue following us on social media, be it LinkedIn, Facebook, or even Instagram, where we share information with different links on where you could find more materials or more tools in order to get prepared. The rules are starting to be enforced from tomorrow. We are trying to make sure that that with the some of the materials you are even better prepared. I'm sure many of you already got acquainted with the basic rules, because it's not only ELA but also all the sectoral organizations, social partners, representatives of operators are doing quite an extensive work to support this sector in this milestone. Let's call it a milestone, because the light commercial vehicles have never been covered by this legislation before. So we are here to first help, educate, and then, of course, in some time, enforcement will also do its job. So as we said, driving and rest time, tachograph rules, and then we will pass again to the posting of driver's rules. We have already held the session on the basics scenarios in posting, so I will try not to repeat what exactly all these detailed scenarios consist in, but rather build on that, looking also at one of the tools for posting, which is a road transport posting declaration portal, through which operators submit their posting declarations. We will also guide you to the materials that have already been there since 2022. Lots of them still useful, still, let's say, up to date, although there have been changes, of course, because as you can understand, every new legislation also leaves through the first years of updates, certain updates that are necessary. So we are now starting a 2-hour online information session, which afterwards will be also translated into different EU languages. So hopefully through these materials, you will find the way to implement all this legislation a bit easier. Ivan, back to you, and I think we can start with the first sessions.
Yes, for sure, Ivona. Thank you for opening the session and setting the scene. As Ivona indicated, let's start with the first presentation. And for that one, I would like to invite my colleague Tonio Bor from Information and EURES unit to present us on the ELA's information activities in the road transport sector. Tonio, please.
Thank you, Ivan. My name is Tonio Bor, and I work for the information sector of the European Labour Authority, or short, ELA. It is my pleasure now to give you a short overview of what ELA is and why we are relevant for drivers like you. But also we're relevant for operators and social partners. We're relevant for everybody that needs information about the new rules that apply to light commercial vehicles. There are a couple of very useful information resources which I will present to you now and which can support you in learning about the new rules for light commercial vehicles. We will make available all presentations, including this one, and you can read up later and use all the links which we provide in these presentations. After my presentation, we will start with the more technical inputs on the actual new rules which apply to you. I'd like to catch your attention now with a bit of a provocative statement which underlines how important events and seminars like this one are. The statement you can see here is something that might concern you when you are conducting certain international transports, namely posting. And this statement is something that we hear a lot from workers and employers who are active in posting. European labor mobility is complicated and bureaucratic. And here you see a possible solution for this challenge. It's the availability of accurate, up-to-date, and easily understandable information. So don't worry, we're here to help, and I will show you now how we can support you. The European Labour Authority, or short ELA, is one of the newer EU agencies. It's a so-called supervisory and implementing authority, and we're located in Bratislava in Slovakia. Our main goal is to facilitate labor mobility, like, for example, the possibility for operators of light commercial vehicles and drivers to offer their services EU-wide. We make sure that the European Union's rules on labor mobility are applied in a fair, simple, and effective way to help strengthen fairness and trust in our most precious good, the EU internal market. We do this through 3 pillars. You can see them on this slide here. We have an information pillar where Ivan and I work, and our main goal is to facilitate access to information and also to services for individuals, for drivers, employers, operators, and also for social partners. You can see we have a cooperation pillar. It supports cooperation and information exchange between member states and the various stakeholders and authorities. And we have an actual enforcement pillar, and it enhances cross-border enforcement of labor mobility regulations. It involves coordinating inspections and enforcement actions across member states to ensure compliance with the labor laws and regulations. Let us look in more detail at what we do for drivers, operators, and social partners in the international road transport sector. We organize road transport local information events, road shows or online information sessions like this one. They can be on-site, online, they can be in different EU member states, but they always target drivers, operators, and social partners, and they cover different aspects of labor mobility in road transport, like, for example, the rules pertaining to Mobility Package 1. And Mobility Package 1 is the package that also now presents the rules that are valid for you as drivers and operators of light commercial vehicles. There are also very practice-oriented resources which can help you understand those rules. They have been prepared as part of our former campaign, Road to Fair Transport, and the campaign includes flyers about a very important topic, about driving and rest time rules. It includes a flyer about posting. It's also something that is very important to you as of tomorrow. And we have those flyers in all EU languages and also a couple of relevant non-EU languages. They can be downloaded free of charge from our website. If you click on the pictures on this slide, you will automatically be directed to the respective resource. But please keep in mind that everything is accessible for free and available in many different languages. You can also see on this slide that we are developing and implementing other helpful tools targeted at supporting operators, drivers, and social partners. Currently, for example, we are working on a so-called remuneration tool aimed at creating transparency about the applicable remuneration for posted drivers in international freight transport. There will be dedicated presentations also about other technical aspects of driving and rest time and posting later in this session. The remuneration tool is something that we currently develop, and it's supposed to help drivers to understand how much remuneration you are entitled to in different member states if you are a posted driver. We will inform you and all other relevant stakeholders once this important tool is ready for use. I would now also like to inform you about our brand new and important campaign about the new rules which apply to you as of tomorrow, Wednesday, July 1st, 2026. The campaign is called Light Vehicles, Big Changes, and it targets drivers and operators of light commercial vehicles, LCVs. Through this campaign, we inform about mandatory rules concerning driving and rest time, the use of smart Tachograph version 2, and the rules connected to the posting of drivers. If you click on the link there, it will lead you to our campaign website with a lot of useful information on the rules and its application. There's also a downloadable flyer which sums up the most relevant points for you. More material will follow in the course of this year. For now, the materials are in English, but we will add other EU and third country languages very, very soon. The European Commission also makes available useful information about road transport. If you click on the link on this slide, it will lead you to the webpage on EU rules for working in road transport. It contains details about all relevant aspects of these rules, and you can see on the left-hand side the different topics ranging from driving and rest times, the use of the tachograph, posting, and also information on the minimum wage which applies to posted drivers. Again, this website is available in different languages. The next resource I'd like to present is our website, ELA's website. It has a special section on the social aspects of international road transport, and this slide shows you how to navigate to the relevant topics. We make available information on the legal background of the provisions in force in the road transport sector, and this website will guide you to also the campaign materials of Road to Fair Transport with flyers and videos. I have spoken about this earlier. You can also find here a direct link to one of to our other webinars and you can also find here links to our recordings of past webinars. What you see here is the official information website of the European Commission on Mobility Package 1. You can find there everything from the definitions, specifications, explanations, everything on the applicable European rules in international road transport, which are also valid for you as of tomorrow. There's also a very comprehensive FAQ section. It has a lot of answers to some very relevant questions. So I really urge you to check out this site. What you can see here is the entry point to the so-called Road Transport Posting Declaration portal. You will learn more about this later. Before I finish, let me just also inform you about some pressing issues in international road transport. One of the most pressing issues is finding skilled drivers. ELA is host to EURES, the European Employment Services. It is a cooperation network designed to facilitate the free movement of workers within the EU member states, including Switzerland, Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway. It helps people find jobs and employers find workers across Europe. As an employer, you can search for candidates according to your preset needs, and as an employee, you can upload your CV and create a profile so that potential employers can find and hire you. The prerequisite is a so-called free EU login, and it gives you access to many useful EU resources and services. You can find the link on this slide. Finally, I'd like to acquaint you with Solvit. It's a free service provided by the EU to help citizens and businesses resolve problems they encounter with public authorities in another EU country. Solvit can help if you're facing unfair rules or decisions from public authorities in another EU country, or if your EU rights are being breached and you haven't taken the case to court yet. You can submit your problem online through the Solvit website or reach out to the Solvit center in your country. Solvit gives legal background information and, if need be, reminds national authorities of your EU rights and works with them to fix the issue. I hope the information I have shared with you today is useful for you and that it will help you navigate through the new rules which will apply to LCVs as of tomorrow, July 1st. Thank you for your attention, and I am handing back to Ivan.
Thank you, Tonio. Thank you indeed for presenting these information activities and useful sources. We now move to one of the central topics of today's session. That is what the extension of driving and rest time rules to light commercial vehicles means in practice. For this part, I would like to invite my colleague Seamus Lynch, second national expert from the Enforcement and Analysis Unit. Seamus, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Ivan. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Seamus Lynch, and as Ivan said, I work in the European Labour Authority, assigned to the inspection section at the moment. I also work closely with the cooperation unit, and I'm very happy to be here today to present our third webinar to you, focusing on the extension of the driving and rest time rules to light commercial vehicles. As you already know, in the previous two webinars, I focused on the basics of these rules, informing you on the maximum driving times, the mandatory breaks, and the requirements for the daily and weekly rest requirements. So today, I'm going to focus on some of the issues raised by yourselves over the past 6 months. We have received many queries, many questions in relation to different issues. So we have a list here on this slide. I'm going to focus on, obviously, the two new requirements, one in respect of licensing and the other one in respect of driving and resting times. We'll also talk about the maximum permissible mass of the light commercial vehicles. We'll talk a little bit about commercial carriage. What exactly is this? I'll focus also on own account and exemptions. We'll talk a little bit about roadside checks and what kind of records are expected from drivers when stopped by control officers. And we'll also talk a little bit about mixed operations and specific scenarios. Here in this slide, you'll see a list of abbreviations which will appear throughout the presentation. And of course, you can use this slide whenever you decide maybe you want to review the presentation at some future stage if you're wondering what these abbreviations mean. Okay, so as many of you probably are already aware, the LCVs are already in scope of the operator licensing requirements via the access to market rules. And these actually have been applicable since the 21st of May 2022. So we're 4 years down the road in relation to the requirements for a community license. Operators of LCVs who wish to engage in the international carriage of goods for hire or reward must be in possession of this document. And this document is issued by the competent licensing authority of each member state to an operator who has met certain requirements and conditions in order to gain access to the profession of road transport operator. In terms of the driving and resting times, well, tomorrow, that's the milestone for this particular requirement. Certain light commercial vehicles will come into scope of the driving and resting times, which is governed by Regulation number 561/2006. And from tomorrow, it is mandatory for these vehicles coming into scope of this regulation to be fitted with a smart tachograph version 2. Now, it's also important to note here that this requirement applies to both hire or reward and own account carriage of goods. The licensing requirement is just for hire or reward, but driving and resting times and tachograph applies to carriage for both hire or reward and own account unless an exemption applies. So just one more slide, just a few more. I want to just touch on a few other little characteristics in relation to the community license, a couple of extra requirements, I should say. It's been applicable now for 4 years. You need a community license to engage in the international carriage of goods for hire reward, but you must also keep a certified true copy of the community license in the vehicle. The original of the community license must be kept by the haulage undertaking, and the license itself must be presented at the request of an authorised inspecting officer. So, moving on to the driving and resting times and what vehicles come into scope. What vehicles will be in scope as of tomorrow? Well, the mobility package has extended the scope of these rules on driving and resting times to light commercial vehicles with a maximum permissible mass of greater than 2.5 and equal to or less than 3.5 tonnes. And this includes any trailer or semi-trailer. So if a trailer is attached to the vehicle, it's the maximum combination mass that will be taken into account. It's applicable only to the international transport of goods or cabotage. It will not apply to the carriage of passengers. And it's specific only to vehicles registered in the EU, the 3 EEA countries, European Economic Area of Iceland, Liechtenstein or Norway. Additionally, it's also applicable to vehicles registered in Switzerland or the UK. Now, what is the maximum permissible mass? What do we mean by this? In layman's terms, it is the maximum weight that the vehicle can legally operate at when fully loaded. So this includes the empty vehicle plus driver, and any passengers, the load could be tools, could be equipment, whatever it's carrying, plus the weight of the fuel. All of this contributes to the maximum permissible mass. This figure of what is the maximum permissible mass of your vehicle can be found in the vehicle registration certificate and additionally in the vehicle manufacturer's plate. Before I leave this slide, just another important point to note is that exceeding the maximum permissible mass is illegal and unsafe and may result in a fine and or a prohibition on continuing your journey. Now, the manufacturer's plate, in case you might not know what it looks like, it can be found on the pillar of the door or maybe sometimes under the bonnet of your vehicle. But this first figure here, this is the magic figure, if you like. It tells you what the technically permissible maximum laden mass of the vehicle is. The figure here opposite number 1, well, this is the technically permissible maximum mass on the first axle. The figure beneath that is the technically permissible mass on the second axle. It's not uncommon that these two figures added together might be greater than the maximum permissible mass, but this allows flexibility. What this does is it allows flexibility. If your vehicle is loaded to its maximum, you can distribute the load as you see fit over each of the axles. But these are the maximum that can be on either. The maximum permissible mass won't change. That's the maximum you can legally operate at. And finally, this figure here on the second line is the technically permissible maximum mass, I should say, of the combination of vehicles. So your towing vehicle plus the trailer. So you add the maximum permissible mass of each and you come up with the maximum combination permissible mass. So just to kind of show you a picture of this, what it would look like. Here you can see you have a vehicle towing a trailer. The vehicle has a maximum permissible mass of 2.5 tonne. The trailer is 700 kgs. So the combination of vehicles, the maximum combination mass in this instance is 3.2 tonne. The towing vehicle on its own of 2.5 is obviously not in scope. If you remember at the beginning, I told you that the rules only apply to vehicles where the maximum permissible mass is greater than 2.5 up to and including 3.5 tonnes. So this vehicle on its own would not be in scope, but once you attach the trailer, obviously it's going to fall into scope because the maximum combination mass is greater than 2.5 tonne. So let's look at an example of this in real life, if you like. Here we have an operator who has a motorbike service, and repair business. And he uses a vehicle and a trailer to carry spare parts and smaller motorbikes. The towing vehicle itself has a maximum permissible mass of 2.5 tonnes. So, used on its own, with no trailer, it's outside the scope of the rules. But once the trailer is attached, the combined maximum permissible mass is taken into account. Now, commercial carriage. The light commercial vehicle is in scope if it performs international commercial carriage of goods by road for either hire a reward or own account, and as I said earlier, unless an exemption applies. So on the surface level, both hire reward and own account are in scope of the driving and resting time rules. So let's look at the exemption, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about already because we've got lots of questions on this particular issue. The issue of own account and a specific exemption being allowed for it. Yes, there is a specific exemption, but it's very, very explicit there are two cumulative conditions. One, the transport is carried out on own account. And number two, driving a vehicle is not the main activity of the driver. If these two characteristics are not present, the exemption is not applicable. So what is own account? Well, the regulation on the access to the market, namely 1072 of 2009, Article 1, paragraph 5 of that regulation indicates 5 cumulative criteria to be met before a transport operation can be considered own account. I'm not going to read through all of these 5 now, right? What I'm going to do is, to make it a little bit easier for everybody to understand, I'm going to show you an example of own account. Here on this slide, we have a company that manufactures steel furniture for the food industry. We have an employee who uses a light commercial vehicle owned by the company to transport unfinished frames to a galvanizing contractor in another member state. He brings the finished frames back to base for final assembly. So what we're saying here is we have an international carriage on own account, because the goods are produced and transported for the undertaking's own business needs. Okay? So let's revisit this cumulative criteria. Does it satisfy all 5? Well, the goods, in this case the steel furniture, is the property of the undertaking. Yeah, so criteria number 1, all is good. What was the purpose of the journey? It was to carry the unfinished frames to an entity in another member state, right, for the purposes of having them galvanized. So yes, it's carried goods outside the undertaking for its own requirements. Criteria number 2, box ticked. Number 3, the motor vehicle itself was driven by a person who was employed by this company. The vehicle carrying the goods was owned by the company. And criteria number 5 says such carriage is no more than ancillary to the overall activities of the undertaking. So in other words, the transport was only a small part of this process. It was a support. It played a supporting role in the overall business, which is manufacturing steel furniture for the food business. So that is an example of what own account is. But then this leads us to the question of, could the exemption apply here? Well, that depends on whether driving was the main activity of the person driving the vehicle. Now, we don't have an article in any specific regulation that defines driver's main activity, okay? There is a recital in Directive 2022, number 2561, which indicates that generally driving is deemed not to be the driver's principal activity, where it occupies less than 30% of the rolling monthly working time. Now, I don't know what the approach is in each individual member state. It possibly will vary from member to member state, how they're going to enforce this. I would recommend to, as operators and drivers, I mean, you're probably wondering now, how do I prove this? Well, maybe what might be helpful would be your contract of employment. Maybe carry a copy of that. That might give some indication as what to the primary function or what tasks have been assigned to this employee. But I would strongly recommend that you should check with the member states where you intend to operate what is the criteria in their member state to determine if driving is the main activity of the person driving the vehicle. Because this, is difficult, and it'll be challenging not just for you as operators and drivers, but I'm sure also for the control officers. This leads me to the roadside checks themselves. During a roadside check, drivers are required to produce data relating to their activities, not just for the day of the control itself, but for the preceding 56 days. Each and every day must be accounted for. Obviously, activities until today, the 30th of June 2026, are not in scope. So drivers of LCVs which are stopped tomorrow for a control, 1st of July 2026, should not be required to provide records for the preceding 56 days. Now, I would add a little caveat to that. If you have a situation where the driver is also a HGV driver and he works for an operator who has a mixed fleet, maybe he has been obviously if he's been driving HGVs, he has been in scope up to today, yeah? So he would be obliged to produce his record over the 56 days. But other than that, the obligation would progressively apply on a daily basis from the 1st of July, meaning that a driver checked on the 10th, for example, would need to show records from the 1st to the 10th inclusive. Now, what exactly must these records cover? Well, they obviously need to cover driving time, other work, periods of availability, breaks and rest. Each of these are the activities performed by a driver on a daily basis. And obviously for drivers who drive every day, not an issue because they will be using the tachograph and their driver card will be inserted, so these will automatically be recorded on the card. But for drivers they're occasional drivers, or maybe they perform mixed operations. Some days they're out of scope, some days they're in scope. And this out of scope work or out of scope driving may happen when they're away from this vehicle, obviously. Out of scope driving, for example, would be carrying out national operations. Out of scope work could be a day in the office, it could be in the warehouse. That also needs to be recorded. Equally, travelling time to or from a specific place other than the employer's operating centre or the driver's home to take over or to leave a vehicle in the scope of the regulation. That needs to be recorded. Additionally, sick leave and annual leave, also records need to be recorded. So you'll find out a bit more in my colleague's presentation, which follows later on in relation to the tachograph, how these records need to be carried out. But in terms of mixed operations, in scope and out of scope, and by in scope and out of scope I mean in scope and out of scope of Regulation 561/2006 and or the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. The Trade and Cooperation Agreement is the agreement, for anyone who might not know, between the European Community and the UK. In scope, well, any international operation performed between the countries in the following geographical area are in scope: the EU, Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, Switzerland, and the UK. An example of an out-of-scope operation would be a national operation. So for a driver performing mixed operations, using either the same vehicle, but if he's using a vehicle fitted with a tachograph and he's performing an out-of-scope operation, the recommendation is to insert or continue using the driver card and select the out-of-scope condition. The out-of-scope condition will also be explained to you later in the presentation by Arthur about the tachograph and the use of the tachograph. Additionally, during this operation, the driver should record breaks, rest, other work like loading and unloading, or availability during the course of this period. And he does this by use of the buttons, as I would have shown you in the previous webinars, on the tachograph. Also note that the time recorded as driving while out of scope is treated as other work. So it doesn't form part of your driving time during the day or the week. It's treated as other work. If a driver performs mixed operations and he uses a vehicle without a tachograph for the out-of-scope operation, like a national operation, for example, he should record this activity the next time that he inserts his driver card into a tachograph by way of manual entry. Again, this will be explained in the later presentation. Now, again, we had many questions about unladen journeys, so I hope that I'll be able to deal with this particular issue by way of this slide. So, in the first example I'm going to show you is an international operation. Okay, so in the morning, the driver starts off from the base of the operator and he drives unladen to another location within the member state. He loads a consignment of goods destined for international delivery to another member state. Well, you already know from what I've said that this international operation is in scope. But what we have been receiving lots of questions about is, what about the unladen journey preceding this international operation? Well, the answer is this is also in scope. So you should use your tachograph, have your driver card inserted from the start of that unladen journey. Now, I'm going to show you an example of mixed operations in the same day. Again, driver starts off in the morning from his base on an unladen journey to another location within the member state where he loads a consignment of goods destined for national delivery. So we have a national operation. And after the delivery of this consignment, the driver then proceeds on another unladen journey to another location within the member state where he loads a second consignment of goods, but this time destined for international delivery. I've told you already that national operations are out of scope, so we can apply that there. But what about the unladen journey preceding? Well, that's also out of scope. The international operation, very easy, yes, that is in scope. But so is the unladen journey beforehand. I would just remind you, let's take the example that this is the same vehicle. The recommendation would be that even for the out-of-scope operation, the unladen part and the laden part at the beginning of the day, use your card. Apply the out-of-scope condition. Ultimately, this will relieve you of the burdensome task of having to make a manual entry or a manual record. It will make, as a driver, it will make your life much easier. Of course, if you are engaged in an out-of-scope operation and you're driving a vehicle with no tachograph, well then you will have to make either a manual entry or a manual record, and Arthur will explain more about that concept in his presentation later on. So to summarise this slide, an unladen journey is assessed in conjunction with the laden journey to determine whether it is in scope or out of scope of the driving and resting times, and thereby requiring a tachograph or not. Now, some scenarios which also came up in the queries. Exclusively performing national carriage. It does not fall in scope of Regulation 561/2006. Do not require a tachograph because the point of departure and the point of arrival are in the same country. But then this then led to further questions about national carriage while transiting another member state. So a vehicle engaged exclusively in national transport but transits another member state because it is the shortest route is not operating internationally. Therefore, the obligation to fit a tachograph does not apply. This is true even when such an operation involves transit through Liechtenstein, Norway, Switzerland, but not the UK. I'll explain that in a different slide, okay? So it's still national carriage even though you might have to transit another member state. And here's a real-life example. Here we have a loading of a consignment of goods by a Belgian operator in Belgium. He transits the territory of France on the way before unloading, still in Belgium. So just to point out that transiting French territory, because it's the shortest route, and if this is exclusively the type of national operations that the driver performs, he's not considered to be engaged in international carriage and therefore would not need a tachograph. Now, in terms of the Ireland-UK situation, a light commercial vehicle registered in the Republic of Ireland performing an operation which starts and ends in the Republic of Ireland but transits the UK is required to be fitted with a tachograph. The same is also true for LCVs registered in the UK performing transport operations that start and end in the UK but involve a transit through the Republic of Ireland. This is the rule according to the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. This is what it looks like. You have an operator from the Republic of Ireland, loads goods in Drogheda, delivers them to Donegal, but transits Northern Ireland en route. So according to the TCA, this light commercial vehicle must be equipped with a tachograph. So that is it from me. I thought I had another slide, but thank you very much. I hope you found it of value. So I will hand back to Ivan.
Thank you. Thank you, Seamus, indeed, for this detailed and practical presentation. You did already mention that we will have a chance to see another presentation that will explain how the activity of a driver should be recorded on tachograph. And for that reason, I'm happy to announce that we have Artur Tocko from the Regional Road Transport Inspectorate in Poland. Artur Tocko is Road Transport Inspector, and he will be introducing us with tachographs as a tool for enforcing the applicable rules and to explain how they should be used. Artur, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Hear you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you and can see you. My name is Artur Tocko. I'm a road transport inspector from Poland, and today I'd like to give you a practical introduction to tachographs and explain why there are much more than devices that simply count driving time. We've got only about 20 minutes to do so, so it won't be a comprehensive training. So the aim is that by the end of this session, someone who is new to tachographs will know roughly how to deal it tomorrow when he will use it in his LCV, and will know that certain points need additional attention. So let's begin with the purpose of the tachograph. There are several reasons why the legislator made use of tachographs compulsory. First and the most important one is road safety. Fatigue affects concentration, reaction time, and judgment of the driver. With commercial vehicles, the consequences of a collision may be particularly serious, so rules on driving and rest times reduce that risk, while the tachograph provides evidence whether those rules have been followed. Secondly, fair competition. As we know, the road transport market is highly competitive and highly regulated with a large number of operators. So to help create a level playing field to all of them, tachographs record a wide range of data on vehicle use. These records provide evidence of compliance with applicable rules. Thirdly, driver protection. Without tachographs, drivers may face pressure to drive longer, shorten their breaks, and reduce rests or record work incorrectly. Tachograph creates an objective record that cannot be simply replaced by operators' preferred version of the events. These data provide reliable evidence of the amount of work performed by the driver. Finally, it is also a tool to gather evidence for control. Tachograph data may concern not only driving and rest time rules, but also a right to access road transport market, posting of drivers, and other requirements. Although a tachograph cannot answer every question that may be relevant to enforcement authorities, it provides a reliable chronological record of evidence how the vehicle was used and about the driver's activities. So to sum up the slide, tachograph serves public safety, honest businesses, drivers, and enforcement authorities at the same time. So let's take a closer look at the technical aspects of the tachograph. So the most visible part of the tachograph system is the vehicle unit, or VU. Installed in the vehicle's cabin, it is the central component of the system and collects data from all other components. Its purpose is to process this information and store it in both internal memory of the device and on the driver card. Currently, two manufacturers supply so-called G2, V2 smart tachographs that may be used in LCVs engaged in international carriage under the new legislation. The front panels differ slightly, but the differences are relatively minor. So the device, the vehicle unit is fitted with a display. So on the left top corner, so it shows driver current activity as recorded by the tachograph, and it also serves as the main interface between the driver and the device, allowing the driver to navigate through the menu, enter specific operations, produce printouts. This is also where any messages and warning related to detected faults and events will appear. Also, some information about the time limits of the driver may appear on the display. Especially in the case of LCVs, if the vehicle unit is installed not at the field of vision of the driver, additional indicator must be fitted on the dashboard of the driver, so he will know that there is some messages displaying on the vehicle unit, even though he is not able to see it. So usually on the right side of the display, there's a download and calibration socket. It is used by authorized workshops during periodic inspections and calibrations, and by transport operators and enforcement authorities to download data from the tachograph. On the right-hand side of the front panel is a printer, which allows the driver to produce printouts. I will return to the issue of printouts later in the presentation. The navigation buttons located below the display allow the driver to move through the menu and access various functionalities of the tachograph. Two further buttons marked with number 1 and 2 allow the driver to select his or her activities. Button 1 is used by the driver that is sitting behind the steering wheel, while button 2 is used by the second driver seated in the passenger seat. While the vehicle is moving, the tachograph records the relevant activities automatically. When the vehicle is stationary, however, each driver must select the appropriate activity manually. So finally, there are two card slots. Slot 1, the one on the left, is for the person driving. Slot 2 is for the second driver in a multi-manning situation. So when the drivers change their position, their cards also must be swapped in the tachograph. The tachograph is much more than only the vehicle unit. It is a system made out of several components, each performing different functions. I've already mentioned the central role of the vehicle unit. Now let's briefly introduce other components to explain how the tachograph system actually works as a whole. The motion sensor, usually fitted on the gearbox housing, detects the rotation of components inside the gearbox and sends electrical pulses to the vehicle unit. And on the basis of these signals, the tachograph determines parameters such as vehicle movement, distance travel, speed, and acceleration. In some LCVs, particularly the older ones, it is not possible to install the motion sensor because the manufacturer simply did not envisage such need, and there's no room for that. Then so-called M1, N1 adapter might be used. Then motion sensor is fitted within the adapter, and the adapter itself obtains the relevant information about the movement of the vehicle from electronic systems of the vehicle. The GNSS module, or Global Navigation Satellite System module, provides information on the vehicle's position. These data are used to determine the precise location of selected events occurring during the driver's working day. The DSRC antenna, dedicated short-range communication antenna, transmits selected data from the tachograph to enforcement authority, indicating that the vehicle might be worth stopping. So this helps in better targeting vehicles for more in-depth roadside inspections. So let's take a look what a G2V2 smart tachograph actually records. The first category is driver activities. Driving is recorded automatically when the vehicle moves. The driver must correctly record other work, breaks, or rest, and periods of availability. These activities form a basic timeline used to assess compliance. A ferry or train crossing can also be recorded. This is relevant when a driver uses a special rules allowing certain rest periods to be interrupted while accompanying a vehicle transported by a ferry or train. And please remember, such entry should be made after the vehicle is stationary on the deck of a ferry or on the platform of a carriage of a train. Tachograph also allows loading, unloading, or simultaneous loading and unloading to be declared by the driver. These records helps to show where and when particular operations took place. When discussing these records, it's worth noting that although today there is no currently legal requirement to use those functionalities, their use is still highly recommended. Recording this information can make a roadside check more efficient, quicker, and it also helps transport undertakings to determine precisely the period for which the driver is entitled to higher remuneration due to posting. And I'm sure my colleague Ivona will explain this topic in greater detail. As already mentioned, the tachograph uses positioning data, but it does not continuously store such information. Instead, it records geographical coordinates at legally defined trigger points. These include the start and the end of daily activity of the driver after a specified period of accumulated movement of the vehicle, and in connection of loading or unloading, also border crossings. Speaking of border crossings, second version of the tachograph records them automatically using data from the GNSS module and the digital map stored in the memory of the device. So there is no need for the driver to stop. The tachograph also indicates whether the vehicle is being used for the carriage of goods or passengers. This distinction is relevant because the applicable rules differ in certain respects between those two types of carriages. Certain road transport operations may fall outside the scope of Regulation 561, consequently outside the tachograph rules. in such situation, it is suggested that the driver still use his card and simply activate out condition. So this period will be treated as other work, not driving. The unit also stores information about vehicle identification, calibration of the tachograph, the distance traveled, and speed data, as well as faults and events. So as you can see, the tachograph records a considerable amount of data. This information can be used to assess compliance with much more wider range of rules than just driving and rest time rules. Tachograph users and enforcement officers obviously speak many different languages. Therefore, all this detailed information we saw on the previous slide need to be presented in a simple and universally understandable form. For this purpose, tachograph use pictograms. So simple symbols representing a particular user of the tachograph, activity, component of the tachograph system, or an event. There are several dozens of individual pictograms or combinations of pictograms. The most important ones for drivers, namely those representing their activities that we can see on the screen. These are driving, illustrated with a symbol of a steering wheel, other work, crossed hammers, brakes or rest, symbol of a bed, and period of availability, square with a diagonal line. There are many more pictograms. Just to mention a few: driver card, ferry train crossing with a symbol of a ferry, arrow pointing upwards, that's loading, pointing downwards, that's unloading. Question mark means unknown activity, so that activity is not declared on the driver card. That means the driver is obliged to have some other evidence of his activity for that undeclared period. Out, so out of scope work, it's also clearly indicated on the memory of the card. To sum the pictograms, the same ones will appear on display, printouts, and software for analysis. So learning them, therefore, is useful and might be used as a common language of the tachograph system. We can see a slide related to printouts. If there is a printout, obviously there must be printouts. They provide a paper record of the data stored on the driver card or in the vehicle unit. So there are two sources of that printouts. This allowed the driver or an enforcement officer to carry out a quick assessment of compliance with driver's hours rules or technical operation of the tachograph. The tachograph can produce several types of printouts. The one commonly used by driver is the daily printout of activities recorded on the driver card. So the first listed here in the table, if due to exceptional and unforeseen circumstances, they are beyond the control of the driver. The driver has to depart from driving and rest time rules. He has to do such a printout no later than upon reaching a suitable stopping place. The driver must also handwrite at the back of that printout the reason for not being able to comply with the rules. A quick practical tip for beginners on how to make such printout: simply please keep pressing the OK button until the printer starts printing. The exact number of presses may vary depending on the brand of the tachograph, software version, and setting of the tachographs, but it's usually 4 or 5 presses. The other printouts, like technical data, usually used by the workshop technicians and enforcement officers. Also, speed vehicle may be represented on the printout. The tachograph constantly records that information, and in many member states, it is possible to impose a ticket on a driver based on such printout. Also, faults and events, that's another kind of printout, but there is many more. Tachograph compliance does not end with return of the vehicle to its base. The undertaking must regularly download and analyze the data. The result of downloading the data is the creation of the digital file containing information from the driver card and the vehicle unit. These files are commonly known as DDD files, so triple D for Delta, and include a digital signature which helps verify the authenticity and integrity. The maximum interval between a driver card downloads is 28 days, and for the vehicle unit it is 90 days, but these are the maximum intervals, not the recommendation to wait till the final day. But you may do it earlier, obviously. So first, download both card and the vehicle unit data using an appropriate device. You may do it also remotely. Always there will be a company card needed for that. Secondly, analyze the files with dedicated software to identify possible infringements, gaps, suspicious events, or reoccurring mistakes. Thirdly, act. Speak to the driver. Identify the cause, correct the procedure, and when necessary, change the organization of work. Downloading data without acting on the findings is not an effective compliance system. Finally, store the original files securely for at least 12 months, protect them against loss, and keep them available for the inspections. So the suggested process is therefore download, analyze, act, and store. As the rules regarding LCVs do not apply to domestic carriage, recording mixed activities are likely to become one of the main practical challenges for drivers of such vehicles. So in practice, a driver may frequently switch from in-scope work to out-of-scope work, next day return back to in-scope, and so on and so on. So let's take a look on this simple scenario that will appear on the slide in a second. On the first day, the driver works as a driver in an international carriage. So since tomorrow, he'll be in scope of driving and rest time rules. Consequently, also he has to record it using a tachograph. On day 2, he's involved in a domestic carriage. So he is not in scope, but as Seamus mentioned, we enforcers suggest to use a card anyway. If it is the same vehicle and there's a tachograph there, leave the card there and simply declare out of scope condition. So it will save you time when you will try to do manual entry. It might be sometimes very burdensome because the manual entry might be divided to several segments, but we'll come back to manual entry in a second. On day 3, again, driver engaged in the national carriage. He is in scope. He has to record his activity using a tachograph. Day 3, he works in a warehouse. Okay. Day 4, obviously. Again, in a warehouse, there won't be a tachograph. He's not able to leave his card and declare out of scope. So on day 3, surely he will withdraw the card from the tachograph. Day 5, again, back to in-scope operation. And on such day, it may happen that there will be a roadside check. So at this stage, he will be legally required to provide evidence of the current day, but also previous 56 days. Okay, so the record should form a continuous and credible timeline, no gaps allowed. So there are several ways to record, to document periods of out-of-scope work in order to fill any gaps on driver's activity that are not on the card. And on this slide, we will see all of them. So driver card data, that's the prime source of the information. If you leave your card in the tachograph during domestic carriage, you don't have to do anything else. Okay, everything will be there. And only if there is a gap, the driver will be asked by an enforcement officer to provide additional information, additional evidence. One of the ways to fulfill the gap of missing entry is to perform a manual entry. That's the functionality of all digital and smart tachographs. So when you return after out-of-scope work and you insert the card back to the tachograph will ask you, what did you do for the period when the card was away from the tachograph? And you may do it only once, or only at this stage. If you will drive off, the tachograph won't give you this second chance to declare that period, and you will simply have that question mark undeclared period. Also, one more solution to fulfill missing data is attestation of activities of the driver. That's a paper document, but there are certain limitations to this document. Only one activity may be declared on that document. It is issued by the undertaking and signed by both the driver and the undertaking representative, but only one activity might be indicated here. That means if there's a longer period to be declared, several or 5 or even more driver attestation might be required for such period. Also, a driver that sometimes perform out-of-scope work is allowed to document such activity using handwritten records. So just tear off a piece of paper from tachograph paper roll. At the back of it, there's a small table where you can fill it in and declare your activity. And also necessary is that you will indicate whose printout is it. So your name, surname, date, which day is it about, your card number, and signature. Some member states require drivers of certain LCVs that fall outside the scope of Regulation 561 to record their activity in accordance with national legislation. So in Germany, for example, domestic carriage, as in the rest of the Europe, is not regulated by 561 since tomorrow, but still regulated on national basis, and drivers of vehicles above 2.8 tons also have to carry on certain records that may involve dedicated logbooks or national electronic system in which the driver records all the required periods. So it is important to remember, however, that such records are not harmonized on the EU level. It is therefore advisable to check whether the countries in which you intend to operate honor this form of activity record. A responsibility of compliance related to tachographs is shared. It does not rest solely on the driver, nor does it rest solely on the undertaking. Everyone involved in the road transport operation must contribute to the correct use and functioning of the tachograph system. The undertaking and the transport manager must ensure that the vehicle is fitted with the right type of tachograph, that the device remains compliant. That includes arranging periodic inspection and any necessary repairs, if needed, at approved workshops. They must also organize work in such way that the driver may be compliant simply, okay? And you have to provide him appropriate instructions and training, supervise him in order to make sure that he knows how to use a tachograph, respond to errors, irregularities, provide paper rolls, and arrange regular downloads of data. The driver also has his responsibilities. He must use both tachograph and the driver card correctly. Most importantly, the driver should accurately record the activities actually performed and ensure that the driver, that there is no gaps on the driver card. If it will happen, you have to gather additional proofs of your activity, but still there are only those which are legally envisaged. These are the ones that are allowed. So in the event of a tachograph or driver card failure, the appropriate alternative procedures must also be followed, and the malfunctions should be rectified as soon as possible. And I think that's my final slide. Yes, so thank you very much for your attention. I hope this introduction has made the tachograph system a little clearer and more practical. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Arthur, for explaining the role of tachographs and their practical importance. With this, we have reached the second part of today's session, which focuses on posting of drivers and something which is also related to that, and that is the Road Transport Posting Declaration Portal, or so-called IMI RTPD portal. For this part, I am pleased to invite back my colleague, Ivona Kašpiksova, who will guide us through the next presentation. So Ivona, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ivan. I hope we are all ready for the second hour of this presentation. And since we are actually live streaming on YouTube, your advantage is that if you had a lot of information already digested, you can now pause the video and then come back to the next session at your ease at any time. Because again, these videos will stay, so you can watch them whenever you're ready. We are aware that 2 hours of this intense presentation is quite a lot of materials. So with my presentation on posting, I would just like to remind you that a detailed, at a bit slower pace presentation on the basics of posting have already been done twice and is available on our European Labour Authority YouTube channel. So you can go there and re-see the presentation on posting of drivers in terms of really scenario by scenario, which are explained at a very low pace. Today, I will try to go through them a bit quicker. So let's do the recap of the posting rules first, and then we will see the obligations, the documents you have to present at the roadside, and what is also, let's say, part of obligations of the operator, but also the driver to be aware of. And then we will go, as Ivan said, to the posting declaration portal, because this is like the first starting point before going abroad to do an operation which is covered by posting rules. So let's recap these posting rules one by one. First of all, the posting of the light commercial vehicles drivers. One maybe important thing, it's not that the rules themselves has never applied to LCV drivers before, but because the light commercial vehicles were not equipped with the tachograph, it has been advised to start enforcement from 1st of July. That means that these vehicles, of course, the ones that from tomorrow, well, from the 1st of July, will have to be equipped with the tachograph G2 V2, will also then allow for enforcement of posting rules, of course, depending on the transport operation, and we will go through these rules again. So again, posting effective from 1st of July. Now enforced to drivers driving vehicles of the maximum permissible mass over 2.5 tons. And we are speaking about both EU and non-EU drivers employed by EU transport companies. Okay, so it's important that these posting rules apply to EU companies doing international transport operations. What are the 3 directives that are applicable in terms of posting of drivers? So I have also explained again it before in previous sessions a bit more in detail. So here we have the basic posting of workers directive, which is quite an old piece of legislation from 1996. That's exactly the moment where first posting rules were adopted, let's say, became applicable. Then we have the Enforcement Directive from 2014, which strengthened the enforcement of these rules. And then from 2020, we have a specific directive only applicable to road transport, okay? So specifically to posted drivers. The rules that I will be explaining today are covered by these 3 pieces of legislation. But what practically does it mean for a driver that he is posted? Well, in most of the cases, it means that he would earn more during the period of posting. Okay, so for the period of posting, the driver would be entitled to a remuneration of the host member state when he will be performing posting operations, if this remuneration is higher than the one that he already receives based on the employment contract or applicable in the member state where the operator is established. So, as you can see, a posted worker can never be treated worse during posting than he already is, let's say, treated under his employment contract. The posting rules can only grant the posted worker a better conditions, okay? So first of all, and many of, many people tend to associate posting only with a higher remuneration, but it's not just remuneration. However, in order to understand how much more would I be earning if I'm posted for, let's say, a longer period in a month to another member state. In case of course, drivers, this longer period depends on the transport operations. And here we would only be speaking about, from even few hours to few days, let's say, of posting in another member state. But of course, you can accumulate these periods throughout a month, and that should be reflected on the driver's payslip. If you want to know how much would, as a driver, how much more you would be earning in case of being posted to another member state, there is a Your Europe website link where certain indications of remuneration applicable in different member states can be found. Let's go further. So, as I said, posting does not mean only remuneration. It means also more protection, because when you are a posted driver, you are entitled to key working conditions of the country where you are working. And as always, as I said, only if this is more favorable to you in terms of course, of the worker. So only the posted worker can only be treated better, never worse under posting, okay? So what are the other key working conditions? You can see a few examples on the screen. There could be either overtime rates. So if the overtime rates are higher than the one that you normally receive for overtime work, then you would be granted the rates from the host member state. The same for minimum paid annual leave, as an example. Here, an important fact written in red is that if you are a driver employed by a temporary work agency, of course, then assigned to an operator, but your employment contract is actually signed with a temporary work agency, different rules apply a bit, not completely different, but slightly different, granting you even more protection and more favorable conditions. So it's an important element to take stock of, okay? Furthermore, as my colleagues were saying, this is not our first session. We have been trying to communicate on these rules since December last year, but also before we have produced these leaflets. So be reminded that there are some materials for you at ELA, European Labour Authority website, where you might find quite concrete, let's say, materials on why all this, what we are saying even, why you should be interested in what we are saying, because practically all this social legislation is there to grant more rights and more protection to the drivers. All right, then let's see the obligations. So what are the obligations in terms of posting that are put on the operator and on the driver? So first of all, before posting, operator must declare the driver's posting through the RTPD portal, and we will see shortly what this RTPD portal is and how to submit these posting declarations. Then, during posting, so during the, let's say, road transport operation, driver must carry 3 types of documents with him, okay, or her. These are the copy of posting declaration, evidence of transport operation, which is mostly a consignment note, and tachograph records, which are then produced on the spot. After posting, if inspected, if contacted by inspectors from another member state, the operator must prove that the driver received the correct remuneration, and he would be doing so through submission of 6 different documents. Okay, so let's look at it a bit more in detail. So we are now imagining a roadside control. As said, the driver will be requested to produce 3 types of document at the roadside. Okay, we see a tachograph first at the first circle. Then we, as said, the driver would be requested to produce a consignment note. And why consignment note? Because that will be the indication of what type of operation he's doing. Consignment note will show us where the load was picked and where the load is going. Okay, where will it be unloaded? Knowing from which member state the operator is, that will be the exact document showing whether we are in front of a posting situation or not. So very key document, you see it even in the middle. And as said, of course, if the operation is covered by posting rules, then the inspector will be asking for a posting declaration. Okay, so key 3 types of documents that the driver needs to produce the moment the inspector understands he's posted. So let's take a look at a bit more in detail. You have just attended a session presented by Artur on the tachograph use and the tachograph records. You have seen also that there are 2 types. You could either have a tachograph records from the driver card or from the vehicle unit. Okay, so here we speak about 2 types, and it's important that every driver has just one individual card, but of course there could be 2 drivers in the vehicle, and the vehicle registers everything what is happening with the vehicle itself. So also whenever, for example, a different driver is driving this vehicle. So you can understand that the vehicle tachograph records from the vehicle unit complement the tachograph records from the driver card. Okay, because the driver card will only show what this particular driver did. Tachograph records will show more. A tachograph of the vehicle unit will show more. Okay, so let's go further. Consignment notes. Here, of course, in terms of the name consignment notes, we are only referring to the transport of goods, because this is the document that you will only see in the freight transport. And as you know, in terms of light commercial vehicles, which are, let's say, the smaller vehicles, only in freight transport they are covered now with this extended legislation. Passenger transport, smaller vehicles in passenger transport were not covered by this extension. Okay, so here we speak about consignment notes, but in terms of posting, of course, there are other documents to be seen in passenger transport. Posting declaration. We will look into details of this posting declaration later on under this presentation, but you can already see that this is a 1-pager document with a QR code. Okay, so that QR code allows for a live check of this declaration because the operator is able to change the details of this declaration practically in real time. Okay, so you can still update the declaration when during even the posting period. Okay, let's go further. Let us now go through and remind ourselves what are the main transport operations that actually trigger the application of posting rules, because not all international transport operations are covered by posting rules. Some of them are exempted from posting. So bilateral transport operations, these are the operations that either, I like to call it start at home or finish at home, meaning the operator who sends the driver with the vehicle is either bringing the goods somewhere from home or bringing the goods back home to the member state of establishment. If the operation has this bilateral character, then no posting rules apply. Okay, so bilateral transport operation excluded from posting. The same when it comes to transit. Yes, the transit, it's a crossing member state without any loading or unloading. We must remember that posting rules are rules that reflect provision of services. This is not about free movement of workers, it's about provision of services. So if there is no provision of services, when you are just transiting, yes, you are working as a driver, but you're not providing any service in that member state when you are just transiting through that member state. That is why posting rules don't apply to you, okay? So whenever you're doing a bilateral operation, bringing goods from home or back to your member state of establishment, or transiting through another member state, posting rules don't apply. When do they actually apply? In the moment you are doing a cross-trade, meaning you are performing a transport operation, international transport operation, which is non-bilateral. So between two member states, none of which is the member state of establishment of the operator. Okay, the same when you are performing a cabotage, so a domestic transport in another member state. That means whenever there is a loading and unloading in another member state, which is not the member state of establishment of the operator. And the unladen journeys, you have also seen that on Seamus's presentation. Sometimes the unladen journeys, when leading to an operation actually covered by posting rules, will be covered by posting rules. If unladen journey is actually, for example, leading to the member state of establishment, where no further operations will be performed, then it will not be covered by posting rules. So in terms of unladen journey, it really depends. Okay, bilateral transport operations, I explained that, so we can see that on the map, just to really recap the rules. On every map, we will follow the same logic. On the left upper corner, you will see the member state of establishment, and then on the right upper corner, you will see the name of the operation. So we have an Italian operator starting the journey in Italy, loading in Italy, and then bringing the goods to France, after which going unladen to another location in France, and then unloading these goods in Italy. Both of these operations are bilateral. Posting will not apply. Okay, we have gone through this many times, so I can be quick now a bit, and then we go farther. Transit, again, no loading or unloading. We have a Slovenian operator loading in Slovenia, going then transiting through Italy and unloading in France. So what is happening in Italy? Just transit, no loading, no unloading, no services provided in Italy. And in Italy, I said, yes, sorry, I'm a bit confused, but you see the map precisely. So in Italy, there will be just transit, no posting rule apply. In France, the operation is still bilateral, so also no posting rules apply. Okay. Cross-trade, let's see when the posting rules actually apply. Okay, let's follow the logic. So we will see on the upper corner the member state of establishment, Portugal. Okay, the operator from Portugal, the driver, of course, driving the truck of the operator established in Portugal, is going unladen to Spain, where he actually loads and then delivers the good to France. So neither Spain nor France is the member state of establishment of this operator. So the operator with the driver actually performs a cross-trade operation, meaning between two member states, none of which is his member state of establishment, and this is pure posting. Okay, and then another operation loading in France and then unloading in Spain, the same, after which he comes back home. And here, okay, we did the first test. We recognize the posting. Now the second question applies. When does the posting start? Okay, so that's a second layer of difficulty to understand when it begins. And here you see two unladen, free practically unladen journeys. Okay, so let's try to understand where the posting starts. Well, first rule, you can never be posted to your own member state. So the posting cannot start in Portugal because this driver is based in Portugal, okay? So the first moment it can actually start is at the border. And it starts at the border even if the truck is empty because it goes towards an operation covered by posting rules, okay? So we start already at the border. Then, of course, posting applies only, is applicable to country by country. So we speak about posting to Spain, that starts at the border and finishes at the border. Then we speak about posting to France, once the driver crosses the border with France. Then we see an unladen journey between unloading 1 and loading 2, which is still covered by posting rules because the second operation is also covered by posting rules. And again, the posting to France will finish once he recrosses the border going back to Spain, okay? And posting to Spain will restart at the border, finishing actually with the unloading moment, okay? After which he goes home. So he goes towards the operator's base, no further operation covered by posting, and that's where the Commission guidelines indicate that that's the ending moment of posting. Okay, very quickly, cross-trade operation between third country and the member state in the EU, crossing through, transiting through Poland, you can see here on the map. So, we can see that the operator comes from Netherlands, because we see that on the upper left corner, okay? A Dutch operator, loaded in Ukraine, unloaded in Germany, okay? So neither Ukraine nor Germany nor Poland are his country of origin. So this is a cross-trade. Why don't we start posting in Poland? Because Poland is just a transit country, okay? Why didn't we start posting in Ukraine? Ukraine is a third country. We do not apply post-EU rules to third countries in this sense, okay? So the first moment actually posting can start is when the driver crosses the border with Germany. Okay, I know I'm going quick, but I'm sure you are following. If not, please be reminded to rewatch the previous sessions on posting when I go a bit at a slower pace. Here, the end moment of posting is with unloading, and of course on this map we don't know what the driver does next, but if he doesn't do anything, that's going to be the ending moment of posting. Okay, cabotage. Cabotage is a typical posting situation. We see an Italian operator loading in Italy, going into France with a bilateral operation, okay, so bilateral is not covered by posting, and then driving unladen towards few operations that we will now see in France. All these operations that you can see, loading and unloading, takes place in France. This is domestic transport in France, okay, performed by a foreign operator from Italy. So this is actually accessing someone else's internal market in pure version. So what is happening here? This driver came with a bilateral operation. We know that bilateral is not posting. After which he did blue, red, and violet operations, 3 operations of a type of domestic transport in France. This is cabotage. In fact, he was only able to do 3 of these operations because there are limits imposed by another piece of legislation, okay? So the question is now, we know cabotage is covered. The question is then, when does it start? And it can only start after the bilateral operation, because bilateral is exempt from posting rules. So it starts the moment the driver starts driving towards an operation covered by posting rules, and it finishes the moment he unloads and goes back home, okay? I know these are basic scenarios, and we have received these comments that we are still presenting basic scenarios, because it is important to know the basics and then build upon it, let's say, with more difficult scenarios. But please consider also that there is a group of member states, I mean all of the member states, let's say, represented by labor and transport authorities, who are working on the farther, more complicated, more sophisticated scenarios, and hopefully to be adopted quite soon so that we can present them to you. Okay, where could you get more useful links? Here you can see Your Europe website. We have short guide on posting of workers, practical guide on posting, trace to materials, so quite an extensive list of documents which could help you understand these posting rules. I know it's a lot, but at least you know where to find them, so we hope that it helps. Okay, we are now ready to go to the last presentation of today, which is on the IMI RTPD portal, where I will try to present you with materials that have been prepared by the European Commission, okay, which are still available or have been there since 2022, which could be helpful to you to understand what to do now. So it is important that you start with creating as an operator, okay, not as a driver, I'm talking now to operators. You need to create your profile at the posting declaration portal. It is only one EU portal for all member states, okay? So through this one gateway, let's say, you can submit declarations to all 27 member states, plus actually Norway and UK should also be connected. So we have, let's say, a few other states even going broader than EU. So what do you have to do before actually creating an account? You have to have an EU login. This is the way to use this portal. You have to be in some way identified, okay? So you first have to create an EU login, and then only you can actually create your account. So first, this is the address you might want to mark and start, let's say, looking into it already today. I would recommend to do it as soon as possible if you intend to be posted from tomorrow. I mean, to post your driver, sorry, because the obligation is, of course, again, on the operator. So let's now focus on operators. So how to start? We have a road transport posting declaration portal where, as you can see on the address, there is a help part. So I would now invite you to go to this help section where you can see different links to different videos, okay? And we will now play 2 of them. All these videos, they are just explaining, taking you step by step on what to click. They don't have a sound, but they do actually have the subtitles in all of the official EU languages. Okay, so if you speak whatever language you speak among the official languages, you can actually select your language at these tutorial videos and be able to understand exactly what it guides you through, okay? So first step, as I said, is to create an EU login. So let's just go through this and see how to do it. Okay, for the sake of the time, I will not replay the second step, but I invite you all to go through this website on Posting Declaration Portal, through the help part, okay? And please play these videos. They are either of 1 minute, 2 minutes, up to 5 minutes maximum. You can select the subtitles in order to really follow step by step. You can pause them whenever you want. So they are really helpful in these first steps when you are still not familiar with the Posting Declaration Portal, okay? So then you create your account, then you create sorry, I will just step through. Then you create and manage the data of your drivers, because you have to insert quite a lot of information about the drivers. This information can be actually uploaded as a bulk information if you already have your internal database of information about the drivers. So it's all quite well explained on the website provided by the European Commission. I invite you to to go through it. As you can see, what type of informations are there? What type of information you need to have in order to create these accounts of your drivers. So first of all, of course, on the posting declaration, there will be, let's say, the choice of the member states when you intend to provide this transport operation. So you provide transport services. So you choose the country of posting, you choose the period of posting, which nowadays is possible to be up to 6 months, okay? So you can actually indicate intended period in which you intend to post your drivers, and you can really submit a declaration per member state for up to 6 months. Then you have to choose the type of operations and type of carriage and provide quite detailed information about the company. And as you can see, whatever you then change will be then also visible on the information on posting declaration, okay? So any change will be also visible to others. Then you have the driver information section with the name, driving license, address of residence, and the information about the employment contract. What is the start date of the employment contract and the applicable law to the employment contract, okay? The same on transport manager information, the driver identification document details, and also the contact person details, okay? Last but not least, at the bottom, you see number plates of the motor vehicles. And here, what is an important change? Because light commercial vehicles are, let's say, now only starting their experience with this portal, whenever you will be producing the number plate details of the vehicle, which is a light commercial vehicle, you will be here actually asked to select the light vehicle, you see? So whenever you will be inserting the number plates, you will have to choose what is the type of vehicle with this registration plate, okay? So the same actually for the heavy goods vehicles, you will just have to sort of indicate which registration plate number is, let's say, representing what type of vehicle. Okay, and then just to tell you what happens with this declaration. So how is it being used? Okay, so this declaration, whenever requested by the inspector at the roadside, who will understand that the driver might be posted, will be scanned. And it will be scanned through a tool, okay, scan on the road tool, where the inspector will probably use his device, be it any device with a video camera integrated, okay, where he will scan the QR code which is on the posting declaration, and after that he will get the information whether this declaration is valid or maybe withdrawn, okay, and he will be able to access the certain details at the current state of this declaration. So there are 3 types of stages, okay, possible stages, which is submitted. That would mean that it's still valid. Then we would be able to see whether the declaration was, for example, withdrawn or expired. So through this scanning tool, the inspectors are able directly to access the details of the posting declaration. So, but what happens after the roadside? What is important to know, especially for the drivers? The remuneration is not checked during the roadside inspection, okay? The roadside inspection only clarifies whether you're posted or not posted. But further check of all your rights as posted driver or your obligations as operator will be checked afterwards through the IMI system. So if you remember, you submitted as an operator, you submitted the posting declarations of your drivers through the RTPD portal. This portal is connected to the IMI system, and the IMI system connects all the inspectors in EU, okay? So let's see that a bit. Roadside check performed very often by either a police officer or road transport inspector leads to, let's say, a decision whether you have been posted or not. In a sense, the roadside inspector either things you have been posted or not based on the documents you presented, and then passes this information to his mostly labor inspectorates in the host member state. Sometimes it's even tax authorities who are responsible for that, but let's presume it's mostly labor inspectors. These labor inspectors are now interested whether the driver who was posted received the right remuneration. So what do? They first look at the posting declaration in the IMI system, okay? They open this posting declaration and they request via IMI. Now, maybe it is not important for you to know that this happens via IMI. You will just receive in your RTPD account a request from a labor inspector of another member state as an operator to submit 6 types of documents within 8 weeks. So you practically have 2 months to reply to a request for 6 types of documents in order to prove that your drivers received the right remuneration for the period of posting. Okay? What happens, because you can see on the screen that the screen suggested, the slide suggested that this can only happen after the roadside check. Well, it is important for you to know that these checks of remuneration could happen even not following a roadside check, okay? You could be just selected based on the submitted declaration for a check in the RTPD portal. Okay, so no later than 8 weeks from receiving of the request, you should submit the 6 types of documents. The first 2, as you saw, were the same as the ones presented at the roadside. However, these tachograph records or consignment notes could be requested for a longer period of time. Okay? Normally at the roadside, we ask for a consignment note of the current performed transport operation. When you are being requested to provide the consignment notes, it could be for a longer period of time, not only for the operation that triggered posting. The same with the tachograph records. The third dot speaks about documentation relating to the remuneration of the driver in respect of posting period. It could be translated into a pay slip, but depending whether on the pay slip all of the constituent elements of remuneration are visible. If the requesting authority is not able to see the elements of remuneration, so how you actually calculated the final amount, whether the driver was actually paid the right remuneration, you could receive further requests from the labor inspectorate. Then they also ask for employment contract and the timesheets and last but not least, the proof of payment of driver's remuneration. So you would be asked as an operator, if contacted, if inspected after posting, to submit these 6 types of document, okay? So what happens if you don't do that? Well, the host authority, the labor inspectorate in the country where you did posting, could actually ask your home authorities for help in getting these documents, okay? So if the operator doesn't reply within 8 weeks, labor inspectorate of another country is contacting labor inspector of the home member state of the operator, asking them to upload the documents. In this sense, the competent authority of the member state of establishment can either contact the operator directly or perform premises check, okay, and then get the documents themselves through the premises check and then submit them within 25 working days. So, in other words, not submitting the documents through IMI RTPD does not end the story there. The labor inspectorate of another country has additional possibility to perform their work. So that concludes the presentation. I give the floor back to Ivan, and we have just finalized the yet another session of for the light commercial vehicles. Thank you.
We are almost, I would say, Ivona. Thank you for your clear and detailed overview, I would say, in general. So, as Ivona did indicate, we are slowly reaching the end of today's session, but before that, we still have one final point on the agenda, the closing remarks, and for that one, I would like to give floor back to my colleague, Tonio Bur. Tonio, please.
Thank you, Ivan. This has been a very comprehensive and compact webinar on the new rules for light commercial vehicles between 2.5 and 3.5 tons, which will come into effect tomorrow, Wednesday, 1st of July 2026. Please take the new rules seriously and implement them now. National road transport inspection bodies will start to enforce the rules, and it is important to be compliant to avoid fines and sanctions. To sum up, the topics that you need to deal with are driving and rest time rules, tachographs, posting of driver rules, and the corresponding road transport posting declaration portal. Those are the 3 important topics for you. We invite you to make use of the resources we have prepared for you and to reach out to your road transport union, employer organization, or national administration should you have more questions on the new rules. I'd like to now take the opportunity to thank everyone for their participation, the speakers and moderator for their valuable inputs, the participants for taking the time to follow this webinar. Drive safely, stay informed, and thank you for being with us today.